Good morning. My name is Grayson, and I go to new churches by myself in order to show people that it's not so scary to go. So, if you're thinking about going to church for the first time in a while, or if you've never gone to church, this is for you. Okay, so today we're going to a United Methodist church, and I have not been to just like a straight up United Methodist yet in this series. I did go to a Wesleyan United Methodist, or Monumental United Methodist, which that was the first church that I went to, which I remember like my thoughts on that. So I'm curious to see how different like this is than that. If you want to check out that video, that is church number 1 on my page, if you haven't seen it. So it'll be interesting just to see like how different the Wesleyan Monumental like makes it, because I'm not sure what that entails entirely. One thing that I really like about this church is their website, because they have a lot of information I was able to find. They also had a whole section just for I'm new, and you could go on it and watch a video of the pastor welcoming you. It kind of gives you a rundown. They also offer free parking in a parking garage, which is kind of unheard of in downtown here. So I was like kind of excited about that, because my biggest problem is like figuring out how I'm gonna park at these churches that I go to. So I really appreciate that. Um, they also just like had a lot of great information just about like their church practices and like what they what you can do to like get involved and what to expect, like to hear about. One thing that they didn't include was dress code, which I know like is kind of, a lot of churches are like just come as you are, like wear whatever. And it kind of seems like that vibe, like based off of a lot of their signage and a lot of their things that they have outside of their church. But I looked at a lot of the pictures online. That's how I figured it out, and it does seem like it's a bit dressier. So I'm wearing a skirt today, which is definitely not my usual attire, but I'm happy to do it so that I don't stick out really bad. Another thing that is really nice is they actually gave you directions to the bathroom, which I feel like is always kind of necessary, because if you're new and you're in service, like, first of all, you probably don't want to get up because you don't want to seem like you're interrupting anything. And then also, it's like, where do you go? So I feel like that's something that's really useful for newcomers to churches, is to just be really aware of like where everything is. Because for me, that's always the scariest part, honestly, is like walking in and not knowing how to get into like the auditorium. So like I always have like, even however many times I've done this, I always have like a little bit of like when I walk in the door, because I'm like, which way do I go? And I don't want to look like I don't know where I'm going. So I really appreciate when like ahead of time you can sort of get a feel for the space. Okay, all that being said, I'm gonna head there now and park in the free parking deck, which is awesome. And then I'm just gonna walk in and see how it goes. So we'll see. I'll definitely, obviously, be back to update on everything. So I'm back, and I have to say, that was probably like my most favorite experience that I've had so far doing this. That church was so incredible. Like, I loved it so much. So starting out, um, walking in, they had greeters at the door. It's a very small church. So once you go up the steps, there were greeters at the door, and they're actually handing out palms because it's Palm Sunday, and they're handing out their bulletins for the week. So I took both of those. They greeted me like said good morning, and I walked in, and you're basically like in the auditorium space like as soon as you get there. Which it's gorgeous. The church is very old, very antiquated. It's from 1848. Um, it's gorgeous. Like it's so amazing. But huge windows. Like we're right on a square in downtown. There's so much sunlight. Like it was just such a like beautiful atmosphere. But anyway, it was similar to the Wesleyan Monumental United Methodist in that it starts out with like the children with the ringing bells, and it's very like ceremonial almost, but it was also very intentional, and like there were explanations like of what was about to happen and like why we were doing it. We did sing hymns, obviously, because it is a older church, and that seems kind of on par with United Methodist, in so far in my experience. But anyway, we had all of our palms, and the kids came down the altar, and were waving their palms, and we were instructed to wave palms also as we were singing the first hymn of the day. And it was so neat. Like, I had never experienced anything like that before. Going further into like the order of the service and everything, so after that they did have like the children's moment where they sort of did a almost a vague version of like what we were going to be talking about, and sort of like what Jesus was going through on Palm Sunday and like what was happening. And then they took the kids like out, and I'm assuming to their like children's like Sunday school. And then after that they sort of went into some more like doxology, like hymnals and things. We did a lot of like repeating things back for a little bit, and then there were like a couple prayers. We did the Lord's Prayer, and then we went into like some more hymns. So then we had the sermon, which I actually really enjoyed. Well, when you before the sermon, they did have a presentation of the gospel, which she went over a couple verses from Luke, which was really cool, I thought. Then we went into the sermon, and he talked about Palm Sunday, like again sort of went over, what was happening, because like it's always hard to like teach on Palm Sunday, because you're like, obviously we know what to say for like Easter, we know what to say for Good Friday, but like what do we say for Palm Sunday? So he's talking about like the donkey, and like the importance of the donkey, and how, there's this verse that talks about how like even the rocks will worship. So it's like, if we as creation fail, then creation like steps up and is so loud in itself that it worships. He was like, sort of, the donkey was an example of that, where he had a calling for Jesus and he stepped up. And the most important thing that we can do is, when we hear the call and Jesus has a need for us, then we should step up and be there and do it. And I thought that that was just really cool. So after his sermon, they went through offering, and then there was like some more hymnals. And I just realized I forgot at the beginning, towards the beginning, they had a moment. They called it something like with peace. I can't remember what exactly it's called, but anyway, it was basically just like a time for us to sort of talk to each other and meet people. So like I talked to the lady next to me, she was very sweet. And then a couple people like came up to me and like shook my hand, and it was not awkward at all. Like, everyone was so sweet, and it was just such a positive experience. It was awesome. And the same woman that was next to me, actually, at the end, like, she was like, "You gotta come back and see us again," like, because I told her it was my first time, and that the church was just so beautiful, and she was sort of telling me like the history about it, and it was great. And then on the way out, the pastor actually was at the door, and he shook individually every single person's hand and like said it was good to see you. So it was just, it is definitely not my normal like vibe, because I do typically go to a non-denominational church, but everything was so intentional. I thought this died. Everything was so intentional, and it was just so like, I don't know, everything was explained, like everything was just so well thought out. You could tell that a lot of time goes into their services. So yeah. Another thing that I thought was really cool in their bulletin, I mean, they have a very thorough explanation of like upcoming events. Um, they have QR codes for your like register. Like, you can say that you were there, your attendance. They have QR codes for giving. So they're very like modern, but they've still kept their like traditional like values and roots, which is cool. Um, but another thing that I thought was really cool is, in the bulletin they had like a little spot for their March like attendance, and then also how much money they got in offering, and then their monthly expenses. So you can see like how they're spending their money. Well, like, they didn't do like an itemized list, but you can see like that the money that you're going like giving is actually being used, because I think they only had like $700 that like wasn't used for that month. But I thought that that was cool, because I feel like a lot of churches, you just give money and then you don't really know like what's actually happening with it. So I thought that that was cool to know that they're very intentional with what they do with their giving. So, but anyway, I I actually had such a great experience. Everyone was so welcoming. It didn't feel like it was my first time like doing this, which I know like now that I've gone to some other churches that do like the hymnals and they do this other stuff, like I still expected it to be a little bit like, ooh, like jarring, like, oh, what's happening? But it really didn't. I don't know, just the way that they went about doing it and they explained everything that was about to happen as you were doing it, and no one was like being judgmental if you didn't know what was happening. Like, I don't know. It was just very, very um calming experience overall, and it was just beautiful. The choir did such a great job. The acoustics in the church were incredible. There was like a huge pipe organ in the back, which I think I'm gonna like put in a little video of it at the beginning maybe, but it was awesome. So yeah, I'm like really glad that I went today because I think going on Palm Sunday too especially like made it really special because they actually gave like the palm leaves and stuff. So it's awesome. And you got to keep it. So now I have a palm leaf. It's so cool. But anyway, if you see this and you're thinking about going to church for the first time in a while or for the first time ever, then my advice would be to research a little bit, see what you would feel most comfortable going to. If you're someone who grew up going to church that had hymns and that's something that you would enjoy, then I can definitely say that United Methodist seems like maybe something you'd be interested in. But if you want something a little bit more laid back and casual, then definitely like probably non-denominational would work. But obviously, do your research, do your exploring. It never hurts to go to as many churches as you need to find somewhere that feels like home. So you'll always feel welcome and no one will ever judge you for going for the first time. So, alright, happy Sunday, you guys. I hope you have an amazing week and enjoy all the Holy Week festivities. Bye.